You asked for it, and now it's here. The long form, feature by feature video of almost every feature in Papyrus Author, including the new features that were added shortly after I published my review video. So without further ado, let's get into this. First things first, there's no rhyme or reason to the stuff we're going through. I'm just going to be as methodical and thorough as possible here. As always, if you ever want to know where my mouse is, I'm wiggling it right now. Just look for the little ring and you will see where my mouse is. So let's play with this menu bar up on the top here, as there's a lot here. All right, so first things first, we have a font and font size, but we've also got the ability, a la Microsoft Word, to change things to styles. So if I wanted to, I can change this to bullets. I can change this to standard Office, pretty standard Office fare stuff. If I want, I can add a sticky note, and I can put it anywhere around the manuscript I want and anchor it to certain text. You can see as I drag it around here, I can add these sticky notes and I can kind of move it around, so on and so forth, and I can type in reminders and such. I have the ability to highlight text, and that's nice. And if you want, you can right click and you can delete the highlight, or if you want, you can right click and edit, and you can change the highlight color if you want. I can add comments, and those don't anchor around, but you can change the size of those as you see fit. Now here's an interesting feature. I have the ability to create editor-friendly pages. So if I do this, this actually essentially formats the story in manuscript format. So I can see here that the font has been put in Courier, and it's size 12. If I wanted to, I could double space this just to make it a little bit easier for my editor to read. So I could kind of go in and kind of do that. Okay, so I've got line numbers running along here, but here's something really, really interesting, and it's amazing. I did not even see this the first time that I went through this. You'll see here, it will actually flag repeated words. So if I click on feeling here, you can see I use feeling twice in like a 10, 15 word radius. This is the sort of stuff that I've been talking about on the channel all the time that I think it's invisible. You don't see it unless someone points it out to you, or if you have a really good editor. This is really cool that it does this. All right, so I can just keep scrolling down and look at this. I've got face here, appeared twice in the same sentence. So this is really helpful. Honestly, I don't necessarily know that I would send this to an editor, but I probably would. If I was using Papyrus Author to write, I would definitely use this as I was self-editing. All right, we're going to click out of that. And you'll notice every time you go into a new like module, I'll call it, I don't know what the right word for it is, it creates a tab here a la our browser. All right, and all you have to do is just simply click the X button, and it doesn't destroy anything, which is helpful. But you can save the changes if you want as well. All right, now let's take a look at the EPUB export. All right, so if I click on the E here, I have the ability to export in EPUB. All right, so it's going to give me some options here. I have the ability to export into EPUB HTML or MOBI. I have some CSS templates. That is an advanced thing here, but essentially when you're formatting ebooks, CSS is really the way to go, and kind of complicated for the average person. But it's nice that they kind of do this for you here. And as you can see, it's kind of changing the look and feel of the manuscript. All right. So I've got some additional options here. I can set a cover image. All right. So if I go to advanced settings here under EPUB export, I've got some footnote controls. I've got the ability to basically it'll compress. Okay, that's cool. So it'll compress your pictures for you. If you happen to have images in your book, you kind of know that you don't put uncompressed images in your ebook, at least if you've been doing this for a while. If you do, it'll make your file sizes huge. So it's kind of nice to know that it'll do this by default for you. And then there's also max image resolution sizes and stuff that's a little technical. All right, so another thing it can do is it can check your links and graphics. So when you hit that export button here, it's supposed to check those for you. I wasn't able to get this to work, but I think what they're trying to do here is if you've got a bunch of links in your book, it's going to do a final flight check to make sure you don't have any invalid links. And I think that's a great idea, especially if you write nonfiction. But let's test the EPUB export, and let's see what it actually looks like when I pull it up on an EPUB reader on my computer. All right, I've pulled up the EPUB in Adobe Digital Editions, which is just a free EPUB tester. And I can see on the left-hand side, I've just got everything kind of loaded in here. It's just a test file. And if I click on Chapter 1, it actually looks pretty good. That actually looks pretty good. So I threw some fake links in here just to kind of test. But as I page through here, so definitely not bad. I would make some adjustments to the spacing, but I think that's all stuff that you can adjust. But the real test is let's test whether this EPUB validates. So I'm on Draft2Digital's free EPUB validator now, and let's just see if this validates. So you upload this, and if there's any errors with the export, they let you know. But hey, look at that. It passes EPUB validation. So this means that if you put your whole novel in there and upload it, then it's going to pass, and you're going to be able to publish this at any retailer without having to make any tweaks. So bravo to the Papyrus Author team for that. So that's EPUB export. Now let's take a look at the PDF export here. All right, so if I look at the PDF export, I can do a PDF for printing or a PDF for distribution with links and such. Okay, so I can go down here and it gives me some printing options, it looks like, and some additional options there. If I click on this quality, I can do some embedding of images and color profiles and such. I can also password encrypt or create an encrypted file with a password protection. That's kind of cool. I don't think I've actually ever seen that in a writing app. That's kind of unique. And then you can also, it appears you can set some permissions. And then there's also some additional features you can export with line numbering and again, some other pretty technical stuff. So let's export this and see what it looks like. All right, so again, I didn't really do very much to this. I just kind of threw it in here and exported it. If I look at the actual chapter, that looks great. I got no concerns with that. So obviously there's table of contents and front matter and stuff that you can adjust, but you know, this is definitely, you could put this on for sale on your site. You could do a lot of things with this, giving it to readers or beta readers or whatever that looks like. But yeah, I got no issues with this PDF export here. Now let's go through the track changes again, because I love this feature so much. I can't talk about it enough. Papyrus Author is the only writing app that supports track changes outside of Microsoft Word and OpenOffice and LibreOffice. All right, so this is a very serious track changes. So if I click this track changes button here, I can start making all sorts of changes, okay, to the document. So if I want to delete this, I threw these links in here. I can delete these, or maybe I want to update this link because there's something wrong in it. I can make it open in a new window, all this stuff here. If I want to, I can even add some additional text, which is great. And you can see here, all of this is track changes. I got nothing else to say, all right? And as I showed you in a prior Papyrus Author video, you have the ability to import a Microsoft Word document with your editor's track changes, and they will show up here just like you see. So great feature and definitely an innovation. All right, so if I right-click, let's just explore this, what happens when I right-click. So I can paste, I can add a comment, or I can add an event. So let's see what happens when I just click this event button. So I'll just type that in, and we'll kind of see where that goes. All right, so I've got this little icon here that appears next to what I just talked about. So I'll go to my second chapter, and I'll add another event here. And I'll say, all right, and then I'll right-click again, and then I have the ability to add a scene. I'm really just kind of playing around with this here. So I'm just going to do the same thing and just kind of see what happens. All right. So where does this show up? If I click on the organizer, you'll notice here, and I'll I'll talk about the organizer in general, but basically this is an outline view of your novel, and it's everything that takes place. It's kind of like your command center, okay? So you can see here with chapter 1, I've got a thread here, which we have the ability to add that. I've got which characters are in the story. I've got some items and locations, which we'll talk about. It also gives me a word count. It gives me times if I'm using the timeline. And then I've got this event here. All right, so if I've got an important event, chapter 1, something important happens, or maybe you want to do an inciting incident or point of no return, those sorts of things if you're following a plot method. That's how you can use this. That's how that shows up. And then also, you can also add additional scenes. Now, I probably wouldn't use that, but I know other people might, and it's an added layer of just helping you, kind of organize your story and be able to see everything visually. Now, since we're here, we might as well just look at the organizer here. I have the ability to print this if I want, and that's kind of cool. It gives me an idea of what I'm looking at. And then if I want, I can change the chapter range, so I can take chapters on and off. I can scale the content, do things a little bit different if I wanted to maybe fit on one page, kind of like when you're exporting or printing Microsoft Excel sheets. If I want, I can take out the abstract. So I can choose which columns to take out. So I can take out the abstract, which is just a brief summary of the chapter. I can take out the thread. So maybe I only want to print, the word counts or whatever. So it just gives me a lot of choices here. All right, so if we go back to the organizer here, I've also got a search bar, which is kind of cool. And as you search for something, check that out. It will actually look for any descriptions in your scenes, and it'll highlight them. And if you've got a character avatar assigned, which, again, we'll cover later, it'll actually highlight that too. I think that's pretty cool. So now, if I want, I can add some abstracts. So much like you would in another writing app, you have the ability to add an abstract and just a brief description of what this story or what the chapter is about. And as you can see here, it appears here on the timeline. So very useful. Now it'll also tell you which characters are in here, and then also it will also allow you to assign things from the timeline, which is helpful too if you happen to be using the timeline. So that's the organizer. Pleasant little rabbit hole trip we took there. Now if I right click again, because this is how this started, if I go down here, I can change it to a heading. I can also insert dates, page numbers, etc. So let's just see what happens when I do that. All right, so I can insert a page number. Okay, we're not going to do that. I can insert the name of the file. I can insert a current date. Okay, that's interesting. I can see how that would be helpful in certain situations. Now, another hidden feature, okay? If I select a word and I right-click, and then I go down here to 38 synonyms, you'll see Papyrus Author has given me synonyms for this word mission. That's awesome. I wonder where they're pulling that from. That's a really cool feature. It's basically a built-in thesaurus. Again, I don't think I've ever seen that in a writing app. Maybe there's probably some out there that have this, but this is pretty cool. It's just like right there at your fingertips. Like if you need a word, you can just use it. And then if you select it, then it changes the word. All right, so you got to put a space there, it looks like, but that's still really, really neat. So let's move on to some more features here. Now, these features I've got highlighted here in the menu bar. These were previously subscription only. So you had to have a subscription plan only to use these features. Now, the team at Papyrus Author has opened these up so that even free users can use them. They're just subject to some limitations, like you can only use so many character sheets, or you can only have so many think boards, that sort of thing. But now you have the ability to use some of these advanced features. Now, the first one I want to show you, and it's one that has received some updates since my last Papyrus Author review, is the character sheets. All right, so you'll notice here in my text that there are some words or some character names that are highlighted in this turquoise color. Now, if I hover my mouse over this here, you'll see that I come to a new and improved character sheet. All right, and it's got my character's name. There's a little avatar there, which I'll show you in a second, and then it's also got some character stuff that I might need to know when I hover over this name. So purpose and motivation, appearance, need to remember what my character looks like, need to remember an age, need to remember some of those characteristics. All of that is there at a click of a button, and it's a new and improved look, which I think looks pretty good, and it's simple. Now, if I double click the character name, I get even more information. So I have the ability now to edit my character information, and I can also change the avatar. And if I click on this, you'll see that this is a new feature. I've got the ability to add a bunch of different avatars, and you'll notice, you probably noticed when I was in the organizer mode, it showed which characters were in each scene. This just makes it easier to differentiate who is in which scene, because as you build out your novel, you're going to have a lot of characters, and so I just like this visual touch. Just makes it easier to kind of visualize what's going on here. All right, and I have the ability to update or delete this photo, and then if I go down here, I have the ability to add even more character traits. All right, so there's some traits based on personality, some traits based on features, background, social stuff, and this is very helpful. Now, along the right or the left-hand side here, I have the ability to add additional notes. So this is kind of like a sketch pad. You want to freeform some thoughts about your character, you have the ability to do that. And then you can also add additional photos if you want to do that. If I go up here and I click on this little icon, I can create a new sheet, or I can set a sheet color. So if I click on this, I can change the background of the color, which is kind of cool. Kind of cool. And you have the ability to do a lot of different things here. So when I'm done, I will click on that, and then as I need it, just hover over that character sheet, and it's there for you. All right, so as I hover over my characters, I've got this information here. Now, if I actually go into the character database, because that's what this is, you know, I'm a big database fan. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but the way they did this is really smart, because if you click on this My Characters button here, this takes you to like a Microsoft Excel-like database. It's basically a spreadsheet of all your characters. So I've got my characters loaded into this spreadsheet, and I can access the character sheets from here. I can do some searches. There's just a lot of functionality here that is probably a little bit too nitty-gritty to go in here. But if I click on this report button, then I can actually generate a report of my characters. This is the report. Now, the reason you might want to do this is you might want to give this to your editor, or you might want to give it to a beta reader or someone who's going to be looking for consistency and things that might be out of place. So obviously, I don't have much filled in on my character sheet, but as you scroll down here, I've got all my information in here, and it could be a very useful tool for you. Now, I've got this little button here. It's called Database Form instead of Sheets. So if you want to do it the old school way, entering in the character information based on how it was before these updates, you can click on that. And then when you create a new character, it takes you to the old way that this used to look. And there's a ton of information in here. So you can kind of go in here and you can fill out whatever you want to your heart's content. I mean, I almost think this is a little too much firepower. I kind of like how they did it in the new version, because there's just it's just a little bit more controlled. All right, but that is you have the ability to update that if you want. Now, here is a new feature. If I go up here to Table and I select My Items, you can actually add items to your story now. So you can add characters, which is important, like character sheets, but you can also add item sheets. So if I click on this one I've entered in here, this takes me to an item that I've entered that has importance in the story. So as I scroll down here, you can kind of tell why this item is important. You can put in that information, and you've also got a sketch pad here, very similar to your character sheet, and then you can add in additional images, which is useful. And then you also have the ability to add my locations. So I've got a location in here as well, and you can do the exact same thing with some additional fields for locations. Now, how that shows up in your manuscript, if I click this To Document button, this will take me back to the manuscript. you can see here that the item, the black box, is in turquoise now. And if I highlight over that, this will bring this up just real simple for me to look at while I'm writing. And same thing with my location here. I've got this here. So very, very cool feature, and something that was definitely needed. Now let's take a look at the timeline. So the timeline, this is a lot. All right. So this is one of those features I just don't think that many people are going to use unless you're writing something that is very timeline specific. All right. So you can see I've got my chapters along here, and it's basically by default saying that each chapter is taking a day. All right, so if I double click one of the chapters here, I can actually start a date. So I can start it on story time, or I can even start it on a fixed date. So like if I wanted to, I could start it on that date. And then I have this ability to add threads. All right, so if I wanted to, if I had a main story and then maybe a secondary plot, I had the ability to label that. And if you'll remember, back on the organizer, it had a column for that. So if I label this as part of the main story and then apply it. All right, I did not add an end date. I should have added an end date there, so I rectified that. So you'll see that I've got an end date here. So you can set an end date and even an end time if you want. And then if I go and click on chapter 2, so I can set a duration and then just keep on doing it that way. And then you also have the ability to add, plus or minus days. So a lot of firepower here, as I said in my previous review. Definitely something to check out if you're interested in that. But this is great that this offers a timeline feature for you to use. And you can also add new chapters, new scenes, and new events here if you want to add them here. Now, if I go over here and click on this little ribbon here, this will take me to timeline dates. So you can actually set your master story start date here, and you can also set the date format, and then you can determine the precision. So maybe you don't want to go with minutes. Maybe you want to go with hours, days, or even years. All right. And you can also do timeline threads, and I can add threads here as well. So if I want to do secondary plot, I can add that there. And then you'll see down here, it is added an additional swim lane. All right. So what I could do if I wanted is I could drag chapter 4 into this additional thread. And so this basically forms a threaded timeline that you'll be probably familiar with in other writing apps that is very useful. So again, I highly encourage you to check this out if you are into timelines. I think it's easy to use. I think it takes a minute to wrap your head around it, but once you do, I think it makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk about the Think board, because there have been some updates to the Think board that are worth calling out here. So if I click on this, this allows me to create a mind map. Now, I can create multiple mind maps. In fact, I can create as many mind maps as I want based on what I'm looking at. All right. The new feature that was not available in the prior review that I did, literally just a few months ago, is the ability to choose a template. So if I click this Choose Template button, I have the ability to add templates that just make it a little bit easier for me to get information into a mind map. So if I click on this romance one here, this will actually auto-populate all of the nodes and all of the threads for me. So if I want, I can actually go in here and I can change this. And you see how everything is kind of done for you. You can kind of move these around if you want. You can add additional ones if you want. And you basically fill in the blanks. And I like that a lot. Now, I can go over here on the left and I can add another one. And maybe I want to add the 3-act structure. All right. I can go in here and I can actually add my own things here. So it's got these bullet points. And it's super helpful. So I know some people, they kind of struggle like looking at the blank canvas. Like, I just don't know what to put on here. I don't know how to design this to make it look pretty or to make it even just effective. And I like that they give you this opportunity to do this. All right, let's take a look at the distraction-free mode. So if I click on this here, this takes me to a distraction-free mode. I've got a nice little background here, it looks like. And if I right-click, I can get my distraction-free settings, and I can change the background like so. I can change it to fruits if I want. All right, now if you want some additional commands, you can kind of go down here and hover your mouse over at the bottom of the screen, and it'll give you some additional commands that you can use. You can also control your zoom. You can do change it to where it's a whole page. And you can even, on the bottom right here, you can pin this. And if I want to leave this mode at any time, I can just simply right-click and select Leave Distraction Free. All right, and as I showed you in the prior review video, we do have a direct speech mode. So I do have the ability to highlight only or spotlight only the direct dialogue, and you can see everything else fades out. So that is also another useful tool. And because I was just curious as I was doing this video, does this work with the editor-friendly pages? So I just open up an editor-friendly page. If I click on the direct speech, look at that. So as you're editing your manuscript, I would definitely be using that to isolate your dialogue, make it a lot easier to edit as you're going through it. All right, so that is everything that's up in the top menu, and we've really only scratched the surface here. I can go over to this pin board here, and the big change that was done after the review that I did is you can now double-click anywhere and be able to create a sticky note. All right. Now, if you want, as I said before, you can change your pin board background. You can kind of go in here and kind of take a look at what you want, and they have added some additional backgrounds, which is kind of nice. And you can also create your own custom background if you want, change the background color. And you can also change the width of the pin board as well. So all good stuff and all very helpful. All right, let's move along the bottom of Papyrus Author here. So I can close this navigator if I want, which will just highlight remove my chapters. I can get back to the organizer by clicking on this little notebook button here. I can get out of that, exit if I want to, jump to text. I can also go here and I can toggle some additional info. So this is basically like the metadata. So if I want to add some notes to this, it's kind of like the inspector in other writing apps. I can also jump in here and add an abstract and look at my characters and stuff. So basically I can kind of look at what's in the organizer and get a view of that here as well. All right. Now, on the bottom here, I've also got this pie graph. This is a new feature in Papyrus Author. It's a writing goal. So if I click this, it gives me the ability, it gives me this pop-up, and I can do what other writing apps allow you to do. So if I want to set a word count goal for my project, I can do that, and I can do it by words, lines, paragraphs, characters, etc. I can set an overrun if I want. I can also have Papyrus Author notify me. So what that looks like is the screen goes white and then a little notification pops up. It's very, very subtle and easy to get rid of. You can hide those notifications if you want. And then I can set a deadline if I want. And I love this, all right? So if I want to select a deadline, the day that you start turns into this play button, and then the ribbon is your deadline. And then you can also determine if you want to have a word count for your sessions, word count goal for your sessions. So really when it says sessions, really what it's saying is it's a daily word count. All right. So if I want to do 2,000 words a day, I can choose the time of day that this resets. All right. So if I wanted to reset at midnight, I can do that. If I wanted to reset upon opening the next project or the next day the project is opened, this is pretty standard writing app fare. And then I've also got some progress bars down here that are helpful, as well as a refresh button. So very cool to see that Papyrus Author has added this. Makes it very competitive with other writing apps that offer very similar functionality. Okay, so I've got this little feather down here. This little feather just enables what we saw in the editor-friendly images. If you want to have that available, so you can see here, I've got words that are repetitive words that are highlighted there. And if I click that feather button, those go away. If I click this little I button, this basically gives me a readability analysis. I'll cover this in the document statistics chart a little bit later, but basically the cooler the color, the easier this is to read. The warmer the color, the more difficult it is to read. Oh, look, there's that deadline. That's a deadline notification, all right? So that's what that looks like, all right? Pretty not terribly obtrusive, all right? You can click it and then it's gone. All right, so that's what that looks like. You know, for fiction, I'm going to recommend that folks turn that off. That's not really something you should be using for fiction. For nonfiction or like a high school essay or something like that, then have at it. But I would not recommend that fiction writers use that. It's just not something that will help you with the craft. So now let's go through the menus and see what we've got here. So File, I've got some Save As commands. I can also save this project to the cloud if I want to do that. I can also, looks like I've got a Revert. Now let's talk about backups. All right. Now this is something I really like. Okay. So Papyrus Author, as with many different writing apps, will back up your work regularly to the point where it'll do it automatically. You don't have to think about it. This just gives you some additional flexibility, it looks like. So you can choose how many backups it's going to keep. You can also specify a different backup path. If I click on this button here, I can choose where I want to save stuff. You know, nothing crazy here. But this is the feature that I really like. And I really wish I could have covered this in the review video. So you have the ability to save very important backups and also do versioning. All right, so let's say, for the sake of argument, that you are writing and you come to a fork in the road. All right, maybe the story could go one way, maybe it could go another way. If it goes one way, gosh, you really want to save it, because if it doesn't work out, you kind of want to revert back. And maybe the other way doesn't work out. So you just don't know. All right, you can save a very important backup and name it, and then that way you can revert to it whenever you want. So, you know, maybe you name it Path A, all right, and then you just go through and you go through. So versioning, I think, is really important. I think it's something that more authors should be doing. Not so much with your manuscript, but with just when you publish a book. I just think it makes sense to have versioning. Just makes sense. So I'm a big fan of versioning in any regard. And you can also add some comments for this as well. So I love this feature. It's something I would highly recommend that most people take a look at. You never know when you're going to need it. All right, let's keep charging through the file command here. I can also publish a number of different formats. We've been through the ones on the top here, but I can also save as a Word doc, docx, RTF, ODT. You kind of name the format. There's really no formats here that I can think of that are missing. All right, so I can also generate. So I can generate styles from another document. I can insert front matter, run presentation. I've never actually clicked on this, so let's see what this does. So this takes me to like a presentation mode. I can kind of click through these, and it's based on your mouse. So okay, so this is kind of different. So left goes back, right goes forward. So if I go right click on my mouse, I can actually page through the manuscript, and it's kind of interesting. I'm trying to think of a use case where you might need that. I guess if you're wanting to read the final version and you don't want the pin board there, maybe you don't want to use the distraction-free mode. It could be pretty helpful. So I'll just hit escape, and that'll take me out. All right. So if I go back to File, and then I can also do page setup for printing. All right. So I have the ability, much like some other writing apps here, I can format it for printing. I can also change paper size, all that stuff. And then if I go back and go to print, I can also update odd number pages, even number pages. This is basically how you would use Papyrus Author to create a paperback. As with most writing apps, I'm not going to rag on Papyrus Author for this. I think most writing apps don't handle paperback formatting gracefully. It's just a limitation, I think, of Mac OS rather than programming limitations. Most people are probably going to be using Vellum for this anyway, but if you're in a pinch, you do have the ability to update this. All right, so moving on here, I have also the ability to do global notes. All right, so these are notes that apply irrespective of any of your projects. So it's almost like a notebook that's not really connected to any of your other projects if you happen to want to use that. All right, and I've also got some favorites, so I can add this document to favorites. This is very similar to some other writing apps where if you've got a document that you want to refer to on a regular basis. I can also set some associated documents. So you can even set these to automatically open. So that's kind of cool. All right, so that's the file menu. If I go to edit, I've got some other things here. Paste and match style. That is a very important feature no matter what writing app you're using. I've also got the ability to do some paste specials. I've also got find and replace. And then I've also got some special commands here. I can swap words left and right. I can also look for spelling and grammar errors. And there's also some text, some other text things I can do. Now, there is a text macro feature. I have not, if there's anybody that likes macros, it's definitely me. Basically, these are like these appear to be like shorthand commands. So you can kind of play around with this as you see fit. But it's not nearly as powerful as like Microsoft Word macros, but definitely gives you some automation. All right, so then we're going to keep going. I can also work on keyboard shortcuts. So I can assign keyboard shortcuts if I want. Looks like I've got pretty much the whole gamut of the menu. So you definitely want to look on the Papyrus Author website to see if there are other, if there are already keyboard shortcut commands that you can use rather than reinventing the wheel. All right, so if I go to view, I can do full screen, distraction free. I can show invisible elements. I can go into typewriter mode, which I've shown that in other videos. I've also got timestamps. That's helpful as well. So, if I make changes to something, type in some words, you can see it creates a timestamp just like that. Very helpful if you need to remember when you made a change on something, or if something was a particular part of a draft and you need to remember when you did it. That's also helpful. And it's kind of a hidden gem of a feature, honestly. All right, so we can also show direct speech only here. Okay, so I've also got these modes here. If I go to work mode and I do pure, you'll notice what it does is it sends me into full screen and it gets rid of the menu on the top. Okay, now if I just kind of cycle through a few of these modes, if I do novel writing, it basically changes the items that are available in this menu. So if I go to nonfiction, then it will basically kind of take out most of the commands here. It'll give me some more pin boards. So it's kind of cool. So if I go to view and preferences, I have the ability to make some updates and customize this just a little bit further. All right. Now if I go to insert, I can insert some special characters. That's great. I can insert page numbers. I can insert references. I can even do tables. So that's helpful. I can do index entries if you happen to need that. And then if I go to text, I have some ability to do some other things. None of these look like worth going into in this video. If I go to paragraph, that's also pretty straightforward stuff. Nothing crazy there that you haven't seen anywhere else. And now here's where things start getting a little interesting, all right? So if I go to document properties, this pulls up what we just saw in the document backups. But let's just go through this here. So here's where I can set my metadata for the book. So this is what will show up in your ebook metadata. So helpful to know. You can also insert front matter into the document. And then the book and the author, you can add the book description and the author description. It's also additional metadata fields that you can add. Just gives additional data to your book. And then I can also change my line numbering, all that stuff. I can actually get back to my timeline threads here. I can also change some document types. And yeah, that's our document properties. All right. Now, if I go to page layout, here's where I can actually start to fine-tune some of the paperback stuff. All right, so you can set your margins here. You can set your header and your footer. You can change your page numbering. There is a master page feature that I would recommend looking up some materials on the Papyrus Author website. Now, here's the thing about this. Writing apps just generally don't do paperback formatting all that well. This is serviceable. This is pretty similar to what other apps offer. I would recommend people use a dedicated formatting app. But if you're in a pinch and you need this, it's here for you. All right, so now I can also change running page numbers if I want to do that. So just another paperback formatting thing. I also have the ability to, I'll go down here to document statistics. All right, so generally it gives me some data about it. Gives me some statistics on the text. Gives me some word frequency. So that's kind of cool. So I can kind of tell at a glance which words I'm using most frequently. And I can also copy that to clipboard, so I can put that in a text file if I want. It also gives me instances of fonts. That's interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. Maybe you made a mistake and you had some of your story in Arial and some of it in Times New Roman. Now, when you export that to EPUB, probably not the end of the world, but maybe if you're exporting the paperback, it would show up. And I've also got some styles, and it'll show me pictures, any pictures that I've got here. And I can also export that. And then it'll tell me links. So it'll give me all of my links here. And it'll also give me the ability to check them. Okay, that's it. That's just a very important thing for ebooks. And then I can also add some labels, and it'll show me my additional backup version. So kind of a hidden thing here. This is very similar to Calibur's report function. I don't know if you've ever used Calibur, but Calibur gives you a lot of this information as well, and allows you to export it, which comes in handy sometimes. All right, so next thing I'm going to show you is another new feature with Papyrus Author, Document Statistics Chart. All right, so this gives me some statistics on what's going on in the story. All right, so sometimes it's helpful to be able to visualize things. All right, so up on the left-hand side here, I've got the ability to do some different views. So one is very basic, just doesn't give me that much info, but just gives me kind of the need-to-know stuff. If I switch this over to editing, you'll see here it adds additional categories over here. So this one has word repetition, and I can click that and turn it on and off. Too long sentences, filler words, adjectives or adverbs. So it kind of gives me some data on that. And then also it turns them on and off depending on whether I'm doing the basic view, editing, or proofing. All right. And then this button here is a refresh button. All right. So if I hover over this is obviously the outlier. If I hover over this, it says Chapter 5 has 108 words out of the chapter's total words in overly long sentences. All right. So maybe I want to take a look at that. All right. And then if I go down here and look at the green one, it says Chapter 6 is 259 word repetition occurrences. So I have the ability to change this to a chapter over chapter view. I can also zoom in or zoom out. And then if I really want to, I can click this results button here, and this will give me this data in text format, all right, in a report format. Some people may find that a little bit more helpful than charts, or vice versa. Helpful to have it in both ways. All right, now if I click on this I button, this takes me to the readability. Here, I mentioned the cooler the color, the easier it is to read. And then you can change that to fiction or science even. So another kind of helpful thing. This is all brand new. This is new since the review that I did for Papyrus Author. All right, so I'm going to close out of that. Now I'm going to click on Author here. I can also do a research database. So I have to create a research database here. And it requires me to convert this to a project. And then this takes me to a database that's just very similar to the character database. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. If I click on this, this takes me to a research sheet. All right, and I have the ability to add in some things. If you've got the Papyrus Author web extension, anything you clip from the web will also end up in your database. So you can also click this new button here, and you can add in additional things as you see fit. And yeah, I'm not going to go much into that, but you can also create a report for your database as well. And that, my friends, is a tour of many of the features in Papyrus Author. I still think there are features that I have not discovered here yet. There are some features I was going through as I was doing this video. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that existed. I think you're going to have the same experience. What did you think? What was your favorite feature? Which ones intrigued you? And could you see yourself using this app? I think Papyrus Author has a lot of promise, and I really do think that it is a heavyweight and a contender for an app that a lot of people are going to be using in the future as writing apps and technology evolve. Let me know. But if you want more writing videos and want to check out some more stuff and geek out on writing app videos, stay tuned because there's another one coming up right now.